this is Kermit the Frog.
Fascinating.
I'm Captain Kirk.
Magic is always there, as long as we keep looking for it.
Engage.
What does God need with a starship?
Thank you, love you. Mwah.
I protest. I am not a merry man.
Places, please. And here we go.
Down at Fraggle Rock.
Welcome, Doozers, Rigelians, Trash Heaps, and Things, to episode 149 of the MuppeTrek Podcast. As always, I'm Steve.
And as always, I'm Jarpin, and we're on a journey across the stars to compare and contrast the creative worlds of Jim Henson and Gene Roddenberry.
As always, what started out as reviews of The Muppet Show and Star Trek the Original Series has expanded far into outer space.
And for this wonderful episode, we have Fraggle Rock episode, The Trash Heap Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and the Next Generation episode, Peak Performance.
But before that, Jarman, I hear we have a little bit of feedback.
Oh, yes, we do. From our good friend in podcasting, Sean Vanderloo of the Have Coffee Will Travel podcast and the Cosmic Pizza podcast. He commented on our last episode with the Star Trek episode, The Emissary, and he said on Facebook, it's pronounced K-Lar, not Klar. Drove me completely nuts, LOL. Well, I responded to him that, I'm pretty sure I put in my notes to say it phonetically, I put K-E-L-A-R. This is the
Kalar.
Kalar, yeah. This is the Klingon ambassador who has a fling with Worf. But yeah,
maybe
it's
we
Kalar.
Weren't putting enough in there.
Yeah, I guess I didn't.
We're just going Klar.
And that's why I said maybe we said it fast enough. It came out as Klar, and I was like,
Maybe I'm just a stupid American.
Canadians pronounce it right. They're better with their Klingon, maybe.
That's right.
But the actual spelling had a K apostrophe and then L-E-A-R or something like that. But
all right, we'll watch our P's and Klars, okay?
But thanks, Sean. We appreciate our P's and Klars.
P's and Klars.
But Steve, now I think I want to rock.
Oh, man. There are all kinds of gems, jewels, and geodes in the world, many of which can be found in Fraggle Rock. This week's geode, gem, or otherwise is calcite, which is a really primary mineral in a lot of very important things like limestone and marble. It has a property called double refraction, where with the way the crystals line up, if they are nice and clear, when light goes in, it splits in two directions. So you can see basically refractions, like perfect reflections through a perfect calcite. Yeah, it's called bifringence. Birefringence.
Is that a Klingon word or?
Yes. It means to fight to the death.
Always.
When exposed to hydrochloric acid, calcite fizzles. But because of this, a lot of geologists carry hydrochloric acid with them so that they can test the levels of calcite and things in the field. It has a Mohs hardness of 3, which I finally got some context for. It means that it can be scratched with a penny, a copper coin, a penny, but not with your fingernail.
Oh, okay.
So in theory, there are minerals that are so flaky that you could scratch it with your fingernail.
And it looks the most like rock candy that we've seen so far, I think.
Yes. It's a very familiar mineral.
Yeah.
So that's calcite, and that rocks.
I want to rock!
Hell yeah.
All right. So this week, you're going to have to forgive my summary.
Okay.
Because as I broke it up into the different areas and they crossed over so heavily, I got really confused about where to put what event in.
Oh, goodness.
So what's up, Doc? Well, it's a hot day. Doc wants iced tea, but Sprocket wants to eat. Doc accuses Sprocket of getting fat and then puts an ice cube in a dish to watch it disappear. So nothing ever goes away. It always just changes. With enough time, the ice cube melts, but Doc wants to change it again, this time into a gas, still neglecting his pet. Doc continues, once just the neglect of Sprocket, while complaining that he doesn't actually like iced tea after all that. What's going down in Fraggle Rock? Wembley's wearing a ridiculous hat and making up a song on the bongos, and he is not very good. Boober comes by and makes fun of Wembley's hat and how bad his song is. But Wembley has to wear the hat because it's the word that makes his song rhyme. Philo and Gunge barge into Fraggle Rock. The Fraggles need to save Marjorie. She sent them for them. She didn't say which Fraggles, just go get Fraggles. They all head to the garden, but the trash heap is gone from her normal spot. Wembley decides that Gobo will know what to do, but as they head back to the rock, they have to hide when the Gorgs get close. Boober ends up hopping into a basket, which gets picked up by Ma Gorg. Wembley overhears the junior Gorg say, well, the trash heap was just moved. It simply moved over behind the shed. Boober is discovered. Ma Gorg throws him. They take Philo and Gunge to go find Marjorie, wherever she is. They find Marjorie, who now has like a man's voice, kind of, and they call it like Mr. Marjorie, and goes through multiple accents. Clearly, as Marjorie is not the Marjorie we remember. Wembley, not knowing what to do, takes inspiration from Uncle Traveling Matt's postcard, where Uncle Traveling Matt found a small room that transforms the people that get into it. But when he gets in, he just finds himself in a different place. Wembley gets an idea. They need to move the trash heap to the other side of Fraggle Rock. But both Junior and Pa decide to take a nap. Wembley uses Junior's sleepwalking to incept him into getting the wheelbarrow, moving the trash heap, and then going and laying back down. What do Doozers do this week? The Doozers are repeatedly disrupted by Wembley's terrible singing. That's all the Doozers did this week. Meanwhile, in the Gorg's garden, Pa Gorg is sleeping in his garden when Ma says she's been reading Gorgish lore that they need to build the prophesied gazebo. He agrees, and he decides to have Junior go deal with that trash heap where they want to put it. Junior is sleepwalking, and Pa bashes him awake, which you should never do. It's very dangerous. Pa orders Junior to get a shovel and go get that trash heap and move it so he can put down the new gazebo. Junior grabs a shovel and a wheelbarrow, cleans up the trash heap. Junior informs Pa that it's time to start building that. But first, it's lunch. Ma asks Junior to grab her sewing basket as they sit and enjoy a lunch together. And then this one I'm calling Trash Heap Troubles. Marjorie, Philo, and Gunge overhear Junior planning to move her. She says to them to bring her some Fraggles. Once again, not specifying which Fraggles, just bring me Fraggles. Presumably, off screen, Junior comes and dismantles Marjorie, which must have been horrific. Philo and Gunge return only to mourn the loss of their trashy benefactor. Meanwhile, elsewhere next to the shed, Marjorie reforms, but is now a dude and just does not feel right. Junior then accosts the trash heap again at some point, loading her onto the wheelbarrow. Marjorie is dumped once more, but she, with rotating accents still abound, she is now over closer to Fraggle Rock than ever before, and she thanks the Fraggles profusely. So that was this week's episode of Fraggle Rock. It got really confusing because normally I don't have three like complete-ish interlocking plots to file.
They really intertwined quite a bit.
They really intertwined in a way that purists once haven't. So I'll have to rethink this in the future.
Maybe. It was fun. It was all over the place.
It was fun to kind of recap everyone's point of view on the situation. So Jarman, what did you think of this week's episode of Fraggle Rock? The trash heap doesn't live here anymore.
I love that we have another Wembley centered episode. Maybe they like got some feedback that people are loving the Wembley. I had just sent Steve a picture how I just gave a little Wembley doll to my nephew for his first birthday, which is for ages 3 and up because it has those glass eyes. You got to be careful. So he'll have it for later on when he gets older.
Adorable.
But I love Wembley. But I think it might have been our first episode ever without Gobo entirely.
No Gobo, no Moki, no Red.
Yeah, I put Moki in Red, but I was like, we might have had an episode. We definitely have had one without Moki. But without
probably.
Red, Red's the middle ground where like we probably haven't had one without Red, but maybe, but definitely no episode with no Gobo whatsoever.
Yeah.
So they're in order of how likely we've not had episode without them. But yeah, it was strange. But it was fine. It was just unusual. It's like having an episode without Picard. But it looks like Wembley's really growing as a character. He took charge with his song in the beginning of the episode, and he literally then saved Trash Heap's life. Because Boober wasn't coming with ideas. It was Wembley with all the ideas. I did put that the songs weren't that memorable. They were kind of like, eh.
Yeah. His made-up song that he did, while fun, went on for far too long.
Yes. It was almost
his
okay.
rhyming song with his hat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of cool. They all got involved. Like there was a chorus that kind of came in because he's making everybody get involved. But the song itself wasn't that memorable.
I will say, though, I did love the Trash Heap song that I didn't write down the name of, where after she's reformed and the Trash Heap goes through different accents.
That's true.
Different voices while singing the like jazzy number.
That part of it was kind of cool.
I thought that was impressive.
Good. Who was the voice actor for the Trash Heap?
Not Richard Hunt. Every time and the worst part is, it is always the same person every time you ask me.
Is it the G guy? What's his face?
Not Dave Goles.
Not Goles.
It's Jerry Nelson.
Oh, Jerry Nelson. Okay, yeah, that was impressive. All the different German,
every time
Irish.
it's Jerry Nelson.
We had every kind of accent known to man.
There was like a voice that was so low and gravelly you really couldn't understand what it was saying.
Yeah, that happened a couple times. The quick doozer moments were fun. They were reacting to Wembley's terrible high notes while he was singing. They're like, oh, God.
I did love that.
But never enough doozers. And I also love whenever we get more Gorg lore. We got lots. You talked about a big tome that had the ancient history of Gorgs. I'm like, where are these other Gorgs and what happened to them?
And they keep the secret of the gazebo.
Yeah.
They do mention, it might be this one or maybe a recent one where they talk about how like, and they're the only ones.
Yeah. What does that mean?
However, there was also a moment early where they talked about Paul was worried that someone had come to war with them.
Yeah.
Junior was like, he thought Junior was injured in an attack on the homestead.
The
question then becomes like, who would it be?
Yeah, some invading force or something.
Yeah. So it's just one of those funny things. So who knows? Maybe we'll discover more.
Yeah, maybe there's a whole Gorg storyline going on there. And also, I guess we'll have to see if Marjorie's in this new location just going forward for us of the episodes. I don't know. Or do they put her back in the old set again?
I don't remember. I'm excited to find out. It would make sense if they put her closer to Fraggle Rock because every time they need to go see her, there's like a story element that has to go with it where they've got to cross the Gorgs Garden. And I bet you after 22 episodes, that is so thin now. They're like, okay, we can't do anymore. They almost get caught on the way to the Gorgs Gardens.
And expensive.
Friggin' mind.
Because you had to use the minis and you got to use the Gorgs and like, yeah. So it makes a lot of sense. It's like using a transporter instead of a shuttlecraft that's expensive to film.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, you don't have to watch them do anything.
Mm-hmm. So for me, it's kind of a middling episode, but not bad. It's just there was just kind of not the greatest songs. It was kind of, but it wasn't bad either. So I don't know. What do you think?
I put this middle high. I think your critique is straight on. If this had better songs matched with the story we got to watch, I think this would easily be like, well, this is probably top 3.
I agree with that.
Season. Yeah. But the music just was not on par with other episodes.
But still fun throughout. Like it wasn't a bad episode at all.
Great. Yeah. I mean, good story and the whole Marjorie thing is just great. But
I love Wembley.
Music fell short. Well, what were the silly creatures up to this week? Well, Uncle Traveling Matt got into an elevator. Elevators were mentioned as early as ancient times, like 300 or something, referenced by Archimedes in ancient Greece. In the 1800s, they became sort of industrial movers. They were all originally steam powered.
Wow.
But they predominantly only moved freight and goods because the public really, really didn't trust elevators for a long time.
I get it. That makes sense.
People were okay moving boxes, but they were not okay moving themselves.
That's the same thing with transporters in Star Trek. They show in the Enterprise show that people didn't trust them for a long time and they just used freight for it. And then finally people trusted it enough. That's funny.
But then in 1853, a guy named Elisha Otis invented a safety braking system that prevented elevators from falling when their ropes snapped. So an auto brake system. And with this, deaths due to elevator accidents plummeted and the public greatly began to trust them. So by the early 19th century, when the major skyscrapers started showing up, mind you, that was additionally after World War II, but elevators went in most buildings by that time. There was enough trust in them by then. And the Otis Elevator Company, founded by Elisha Otis, still operates or creates more than 1 in 4 elevators in buildings around the world.
Oh, yeah. You see a little Otis sign.
The founder's company still is a quarter of all business. The bulk majority of elevators have that door closed button, but for most of them, it's disabled. It's a placebo.
I've noticed that.
It doesn't actually close the doors just to make you feel better.
Why?
And elevator music, which has been lampooned and poked at for years, was originally introduced in the early 1900s. And it was to cover the uncomfortable machinery noises that made people nervous.
That makes sense.
That is why the elevators did eventually get much more quiet, but that was the original reason. Was it it just made people nervous? Yes.
That makes so much sense.
Well, that's what those silly creatures are up to. They're riding in elevators. Jarman, what did you think was the best Muppeteering moment this week?
I'm actually let you go first because I did see what you wrote. So I wanted to add to what you say, depending on what you say.
I put the Wembley incepting Junior, but really the effect that followed with the small radio controlled in some way Wembley on the side of Junior's head while Junior moved all over the place, untethered. Giving him instructions and interacting with full-size Junior.
Yeah, because I wanted to see what you were going to say because I was going to write that initially, and I was like, oh yeah, same deal. But also the fact that the actor in the Gorg costume has the eyes closed. I'm guessing he doesn't see through those eyes anyway, but...
No, he has a little tiny TV monitor that's mounted down here. That's why the head's so friggin' big.
It's huge.
Yeah, and it's because there was a little tiny TV monitor right there.
But the fact that he was running around in those circles and backwards and didn't run into anything or fall over, at least in the takes that we saw, I'm guessing he might have fallen over otherwise. I thought that was impressive all on its own. He did a great job.
Yeah, the physicality in those Gorg suits is absolutely incredible.
They make them seem heavy and big and, it's great. Yeah, that was definitely it for me too.
Well, so Jarman, what happened in this week's episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation?
Well, this week we have Peak Performance, which I remember this episode vaguely, but keep running into episodes I don't remember the names of the episode for, so Peak Performance did not ring a bell, but I do remember this episode. Starfleet orders Enterprise into war game exercises because they need to prepare for the possible Borg attack. I do like the continuing through line there. The crew gets stuck with this guy named Sirna Kolrami. He's the super smug Zach Dorn strategy genius who's there to judge their performance. So Riker, on a whim, just decides to challenge this very smug guy to a game of Strategema. And it's this complicated game where you apparently shake your fingers a whole bunch and look constipated. That's what I put because it looks like there's the whole time. But he loses horribly, which he kind of expected to lose because this guy's a strategy genius. So Pulaski doesn't like the cut of this guy's jib. So she wants Data to challenge him to a game of Strategema. She thinks, of course, Data will beat this guy. It's like playing chess against a computer. But it doesn't really work out too well because Data plays against him and still just barely loses to this guy, much pissing off the whole crew. They're like, oh, damn it. And so Data just goes away and he's very disappointed in himself, which we'll get to later. But back at the War Games, Riker takes command of this old beat-down Federation starship called the USS Hathaway, which has 0 antimatter fuel, no warp drive, and limited weapons. They basically want to pit them against the Enterprise to try to test Starfleet's ability to improvise under difficult situations once the Borg comes in. So Riker assembles his team for the War Games. We kind of have a medley of scenes where he picks up Geordi, Worf, and Wesley for his team to be on the Hathaway with him. But while they're on the Hathaway, they realize they have no antimatter. So Wesley, being told to improvise by Riker, he secretly and like very snidely sneaks over to the Enterprise to say he's checking on his science experiment, but really he's getting antimatter from his school project to bring back to the Hathaway, which is pretty clever. And Riker is a little upset initially, but he's like, hey, you did improvise, so let's do it. Data, meanwhile, he's sulking and listless after his loss to Kolrami at Strategema. He thinks he's malfunctioning. He's supposed to be, infallible. He's supposed to be on the bridge working. So Troy comes up to see him to see if she can help him. And that doesn't work. Pulaski tries to just get through to him to say, hey, you're fine. Get back on the bridge. Finally, they have Picard to come in to give him a pep talk. And Picard's epicness and his great monologue finally wins out, which we'll talk about later, and gets him back on the bridge and gets his confidence back. So this simulated War Games battle kicks off, and so Worf hacks the Enterprise, making their sensors see a fake Romulan ship. And then once they see that ship, they freak out, and Hathaway gets the first blows, initially impressing the Kohlrami guy. But suddenly an actual Ferengi ship arrives and attacks the Enterprise, which Picard allows to attack them because he thinks it's another fake ship, but apparently it's real, and it cripples the Enterprise before they can properly react, which I'm surprised a Ferengi ship can that quickly they cripple the Enterprise. The Ferengis say they're confused why the Enterprise is attacking one of its own ships, and they're convinced there must be something really valuable on the Hathaway, and that's why they're attacking it. So the Enterprise, they insist the Enterprise hands over the Hathaway or they'll destroy the Enterprise. And the Enterprise can't attack back because their weapons are all stuck in simulation mode. So they can't take out the Ferengi ship. Their transporters are offline, and they don't want to just warp away and abandon Riker and the Hathaway crew. So Parker, mix their two names together. Riker and Picard, they hatch this plan. Well, the Enterprise will shoot torpedoes at the Hathaway as if to blow it up, but the Hathaway will warp jump just before the impact to make the Ferengis think the Enterprise destroyed the Hathaway. And the plan works, and that pisses off the Ferengi, and they're about to blow up the Enterprise in anger. But then Worf pulls a second sensor hack and makes the Ferengi think that Starfleet ships are approaching to send the rescue. So they eventually just flee from the incoming fake Starfleet ships. Kohlrami, the smug guy, he begrudgingly admits that he's impressed with everyone's performance, and he tells them that he'll leave a great review with Starfleet. And after that, Data has a rematch with Kohlrami at Strategema, but this time Data trolls Kohlrami by purposely trying not to win, but just keeping it a stalemate indefinitely, which eventually pisses off Kohlrami, and he rage quits and runs away. So Data claims that it's just a draw. He didn't actually win, but Pulaski convinces him to take the win, and everybody cheers and makes Data give a little smile at the end because he succeeded. And that's our episode Peak Performance. So Steve, what'd you think of this episode?
All right. So some things I liked. Military exercise was interesting because more and more they say like Starfleet's not a military.
Mm-hmm.
And so we always get kind of mixed messages on that as far as like they all have hand-to-hand combat training and they all wear military uniforms and everything's named after submarine terms. But sometimes they get their butt kicked real bad, make dumb tactical decisions. So it was good to see that they're finally like fixing this shit. I did like that Riker engaged in the like strategema match. I didn't understand. I thought it was going to pay off, and maybe that this thing goes sort of in the dislikes, where I thought Riker challenging him was going to have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Where I thought it was going to go was it was intended for Data to see it, so Data could whip his ass later. But instead, it was Riker just lost.
That kind of inspires Data to then play against him, or Pulaski to force him
it
to
doesn't. Play. Pulaski forces Data into that shit. Even Data's like, why would I compete? I don't understand. I did like the idea of them fixing up the old jalopy starship for the war game. It felt very like summer camp movie almost. Dr. Pulaski doing her own positioning in games was fun to see, like what I mentioned with her kind of egging Data on and making the situation happen. Once again, and then Data playing the guy and assuming he was wrong was kind of interesting, but it didn't pay off in the way I think it could have. And then even further pushing the premise with him taking himself off the bridge. Yeah, it just didn't pay out the way it should have, I think.
I think it was more of just about him learning a human moment and that you're not always going to win everything, but I'll get into that later.
But I think we could have gotten Data got his groove back in a different way, and I'll talk about
Data
it too.
got his groove back.
And then I wrote, whoa, Ferengi! I love that they're taking steps to fix what they did. Because the Ferengi, the first time we saw them, were so bad.
Monkeys. They
were so like chipmunk monkey squirrel men who hopped around and had laser whips. And I did love them completely coming in and misreading the situation between the two ships. Like, why would you attack your own ship? It has no blaster. Like, just making fun of them, basically. Dislikes, things I struggled with a little bit. It felt unfair that Worf's deep knowledge of Enterprise systems which in theory is something an enemy wouldn't have, is what initially gave them the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Because it felt like, I know how we can win, Captain. We'll cheat. Like that felt like that felt like the opening premise. I do like that the Ferengi gave them 10 minutes and then they went into a very leisurely ready room scene with very little eagerness.
Yeah, there's actually a podcast called Dork Trek, which they watch all these episodes. They make fun of how many times they do a staff meeting when something really important's happening. It's like this slow, casual staff meeting. It's like, what? There's something happening right now.
And then my take on what should have happened with Data. Dissatisfying that Data just simply beat him because he believed in himself. Like that felt.
I like that he didn't beat him necessarily. That's why they kind of didn't make him
but
quite.
He won. He had a higher score when the guy walked away. That's called a win.
I guess so.
But I think all those things could have come to pass, and it could have been just as good in that he sees Riker play. He goes to play knowing he should win. He gets his ass kicked anyway. He still goes through this whole cycle of doubt where he doubts himself. He doubts his abilities, takes us to the bridge. All those things could still happen. Goes back, kicks the shit out of the guy the second time around. Exact same plot points, but then have it be because he realized that the guy had used an illegal move. Had been using an illegal
That's
move.
why I thought they were going to go with that, actually.
He hadn't been wrong the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
The game was rigged.
I thought they were going that direction.
I think that could have gave him the same reassurance that he was right, that he did have what it took. It could have hit all those same points without the sort of weird mock middle ground ending.
And that would have tied in well with Worf in the beginning saying that, wait, these guys are supposed to be expert strategists, but they've never actually been tested in battle. And it would have like tied into that, like, oh, that's because they cheat when it comes down to it. Like that would have been cool. I could see that. Yeah.
But once again, it just felt like a missed opportunity. Little tweak, a few line differences could have set the entire thing up. And then it would have made Riker playing him at the beginning. There'd be a reason for that.
I could see that.
Because Riker wanted Data to see how he played.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then I didn't like the I busted him up thing.
The line of Data at the end.
Yeah, it wasn't a callback to anything. I think if they had loaded that line in the beginning of the episode somehow.
Well, they did say that line earlier. She said, like,
when?
Data's like, what does she mean to bust him up? And she's like, it means she wants.
With Pulaski?
Yeah, Troy. He asked like Troy what she meant by that,
Man,
and then later on,
that.
Yeah, she says that. So they did kind of load.
All
that
right.
early.
Well, I missed the load then.
That's
how
all right.
little impact it had.
But yeah, I think it had a lot of good character moments throughout.
It really did.
So like kind of building an arc even with Pulaski having some time to be outside of her normalness, like getting a little more casual with the crew. Troy getting to do some therapy stuff. And also just really showing Picard how much he's grown to respect Riker over time. Because we see him in episode 1, he doesn't really trust him. He's challenging him all the time. And now he just gushes about him to Kohlrami. He's just like, he's the best man I know. And softly, he's amazing. He's the best we'll ever see. And I like Data having some, self-doubt and learning about human experiences, even though he has some emotion. I think you're right, though, that they could have played that all in a little better. But also this has one of the best epic lines from Picard in his speech to Data. This is like quoted a bunch. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life. And that would just like hit, Data in the face because it's a great line, but it's true. Kohlrami was also a great guest character. The actor, I've seen him in other things before. That guy.
He's been in 1,000 things. I'll talk about it in Trek Connect.
I'm sure he will, yeah. But he's just so smug and terrible. He was great to love to hate kind of character.
I will say, we've had other characters you're really not supposed to like, but I've always sort of like hated them, and not in the way the show wants me to.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, they're so grating, they're just drawn so poorly. And for whatever reason, Kohlrami, the actor that playing him, the way they wrote him, the approach just felt great to hate him.
It actually worked.
It really worked with him for whatever mix of reasons.
Oh, I can't wait till we get to Deep Space Nine with Kai Wynn. She's like one of the most loved to hate characters in Star Trek.
Good.
She's played by Nurse Ratched from that Cuckoo's Nest movie.
Oh,
the same actress plays her, and she's just
wow.
Awful, mean, evil, nasty, and like you'd love to hate her. Anyways, Yeah, and just Riker and his crew, scrappy crew on the other ship was fun. Even Wesley's moment didn't feel forced. It felt like what a kid would do. Like he'd talk about his science project, and it didn't feel like it was some super genius Deus Ex Machina thing. It was just kind of a thing a kid would do, which was kind of nice.
Well, yeah. Well, then also him taking advantage of him being like, "Oh, I'm just a dumb teenager. I forgot something.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
sorry. Just a stupid kid, not a super genius that has proven himself over and over again. I left my turtle. I've got to go.
Left
like
my turtle." But yeah, I felt like they used him correctly in this episode. Like that's what a kid would do. But a smart kid, like a scrappy kid. But yeah, I think it's like an upper middle episode for me because I liked all the character moments and I think there was good writing. But I think you are right about some of the things they could have done a little better. So I don't know where it fell for you.
I don't know. So I guess middle to high.
Okay.
You're right. Yeah. It really did have good character moments, great guests that we love to hate. Just some missed opportunities, but not bad.
Yeah.
I feel like it's in the same bucket as the Fraggle Rock episode we watched.
Missed opportunities.
Not awful,
but not bad.
But this X did not live up to other episodes.
Fair. Totally fair. Yeah. Good assessment. Well, some Trek facts here. The Hathaway, the scrappy starships, its main bridge is a minor redress of the Enterprise D's battle bridge that they don't really see anymore throughout the series, but it was in the early episodes. They used that battle bridge a couple times. That separates from the saucer section. The original battle bridge itself was a redress of Kirk's Enterprise bridge from the first 3 Star Trek films, which we'll be reviewing the third one next week or next episode.
Oh, nice.
And then it also became the Stargazer's bridge, which was Captain Picard's old ship in the flashback. So they keep reusing this set for a million times. The premise of the obsolete USS Hathaway being pitted against the state-of-the-art USS Enterprise is reminiscent of several war game exercises run by the United States Navy and NATO allies during and after the Cold War. The exercises have typically involved antiquated diesel submarines being tasked with infiltrating Allied defenses while being hunted by modern weapon systems. So it was a way of making battle readiness in this scrappy situation. So they actually did do that in real life, and that's kind of what this is modeled after. You might have noticed the voice of the captain of the Ferengi vessel because that is Armin Shimmerman, who will later go on to play Quark in Deep Space Nine. Also, for Buffy fans, he plays one of the vice principals or principals of the high school.
Yeah, in the early seasons. Yeah.
He's great. Dr. Pulaski describes Data as having an Achilles, being like Achilles sulking in his tent. And this refers to a story in Homer's Iliad about the invincible warrior Achilles, whose love, a slave girl called Briseis, or I probably pronounced that wrong, was taken from him by King Agamemnon to be his servant. And rather than joining the king he despised, Achilles remained in his tent during the battle. And that line is immediately followed by a clever pun because she says, "You may be able to fool Troy, but not me." Troy as in Troy, the therapist, but also Troy in the Iliad. Because in the Iliad, Achilles sulks, his sulk emboldens Prince Hector of Troy to ignore the counsel of his subordinates who urge caution, and he recklessly attacks the Greek forces, almost pushing them back to the sea. But the Trojans' gains are all undone when Achilles returns to the battle after sulking in his tent in a maniacal fury following the death of his friend Patroclus, eventually killing Hector. So it's kind of like they threw that in way deep references and even saying you might be able to fool Troy. It was 2 sentences. It was weird. But anyways, yeah, that's a little weird little factoids about this episode. What's our Trek connections this time around, Steve?
Oh boy, are there 2 of them. Serna Kohlrami, the guest that we like so much, was played by actor Roy Brocksmith, which you're right, he's been in tons of stuff. But one of my favorites is he played the Mortician in Arachnophobia.
Oh, goodness.
Well, also in this in Arachnophobia, playing Sheriff Parsons, the comic relief, was actor Stuart Pankin, another actor that you would recognize from dozens of things, including the voice of Earl Sneed Sinclair on Jim Henson's Dinosaurs that we're going to watch eventually.
Gotcha.
And then Ensign Burke, the tall redheaded guy that
he's been on tons of stuff
Wesley. Too. Glenn Morshower. He played Agent Walters in the movie Air Force One.
Oh,
where President Marshall was played by Harrison Ford.
Mm.
And as we all know, in a 2012 Entertainment Tonight interview, Kermit listed Harrison Ford as one of the actors that he really wanted to work with in the future.
I thought you were going to say Harrison Ford had a place in the Miss Piggy's cookbook or something.
I do keep a very close eye out for those because they're so good.
We'll need a button for Miss Piggy's cookbook.
Oh, look, there's a list somewhere. I'll look it up, and that way I'll have the list.
Oh, my God.
But it makes sense because these were the same episode.
Oh, of course. Both have characters being forced to do something for make-believe. The Enterprise crew and their war games, which are all make-believe. And then Boober and the others being forced to do things for Wembley's song. They're both just for make-believe.
To make it rhyme.
Yeah.
Both feature things seemingly disappearing and reappearing. The jalopy ship being blown up, then back after it kind of warp jumps or whatever the hell they called it. And the trash heap getting moved around repeatedly and reforming itself.
That's true.
Herself.
Both have characters being underestimated and then still achieving their goal. Kohlrami is just blatantly telling Picard he doesn't believe in Riker and his crew. And then Philo and Gunge not believing the Fraggles can help save Marjorie the trash heap. And the Fraggles themselves not believing in themselves. And they all succeed.
Both have characters being underestimated. Oh, no, that's yours. Both feature.
I was like, that's true.
You're right, Steve. Both feature typically secondary characters going to have an adventure of their own. Riker and Worf as the captain of the jalopy, and Boober and Wembley getting their own episode.
That's very true. That's very true. Oh, what's that noise?
Transporter malfunction. Transporter malfunction.
All right, it's the time of the episode where we transport one character from one episode to the other and vice versa. What you got for us, Steve?
All right. This week, Trek to Rock, I'm going to bring over Data to replace Wembley, losing confidence as he tries to compose an original song and then using logic to save the trash heap, eventually riding Junior Gorg and directing him around.
I can totally see it happening. Trek to Rock, I'm going to have the military strategist Sirna Kohlrami come over to replace Sprocket. He'd manipulate Doc so much that he'd have him wrapped around his finger and he'd never go without dog food again.
That's true. Kohlrami would definitely get the best of Doc.
Yes, I would.
And then Rock to Trek, I'm going to bring over the trash heap to replace the military advisor. I think it'd be great to watch Worf have to cart Marjorie around in a wheelbarrow and then have her change characters and accents all while critiquing the crew.
I love it. Rock to Trek, I'd have Wembley come over to replace Data because this works so well. It would be in his character to do something imperfect and then lose confidence in all of his abilities. And I also would pay money to see Picard give Wembley a pep talk speech because that would be amazing just to see him inspired by Picard. Yeah. But yeah, that really brings us to the end of episode 149 of the MuppeTrek Podcast. But what's going on next time, Steve?
Well, join us next time for a very special episode 150, where we break from the norm and compare a Muppet movie and a Star Trek film.
That's right. We go every 50 episodes, we do a movie instead of the shows, and it's happening again. We'll be bringing MuppeTrek Flair to Muppets Take Manhattan and Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock.
So, from the lovers, the dreamers, and us,
live long and prosper, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the MuppeTrek Podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media on Facebook and Twitter.
Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform.
This podcast has been brought to you by A Play on Nerds.
Hey, Jarman, you know who my favorite character is?
No, who?
Klar.
Oh, man, me too. There we go.